Welcome to the Sports Ethicist Show, coming to you from the basement of Burpee on the campus of Rockford College in Sportstown, USA, Rockford, Illinois. I am Sean Klein, the sports ethicist and philosophy professor at Rockford College. The Sports Ethicist Show discusses the many ethical and philosophical issues that arise in and around sport. You can read the Sports Ethicist blog at sportsethicist.com, where you can also download podcasts of previous shows, subscribe to the podcast, or find links to related information. The Sports Ethicist is also on Facebook and Twitter, and you can email us at sportsethicist@gmail.com. In 1973, the American League of Major League Baseball adopted Rule 6.10b, which allows a team to designate a player to hit in place of a pitcher, commonly known as the designated hitter rule or the DH. The National League did not adopt the DH. Now, this was and remains controversial. Some have compared this to the religious schisms of the Protestant Reformation, which seems, I hope at least, is a joke, but one never knows, especially when it comes to baseball. So to celebrate, so this has been 40 years, so to celebrate or mourn, depending on your view, the 40th anniversary of the DH, I've invited several folks onto the program to discuss its pros, its cons, what we like about it, what we don't. So we have Professors Matt Flamm and Mike Perry, of philosophy and English, respectively. Welcome back to the show, Matt and Mike.
Thanks, Sean.
Glad to be here.
Also, well, it's been a long time since Matt, Mike, or I have played any serious baseball. We wanted to get some actual experts in the room, people who are currently playing. So joining us are Rockford College Baseball players Zachary and Daryn Streed.
Hey, thanks for having us.
All right, thanks, guys. Welcome to the show. Now, both of you pitch, and Daryn is often the DH, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. Now, as hitters and pitchers and current players, people actually playing the game, I wanted to know what your initial thoughts were on the DH, whether you like it, you hate it, you just tolerate it, you just sort of live with it, or have even thought about its pros and cons ever. So throw it to you guys, and whoever wants to speak first. Daryn, Zach?
I love it. I mean, I've been a DH for a long time. Being a pitcher, throwing the next game, the same game is hard to do. So if the opportunity with the DH, next game, you're not going to cool down and want to get it all warmed up again. Injuries happen. So being a pitcher and a hitter, I love the DH. It's a nice way to relax. You threw a game, you go back out in the field, be a little bit nerve wracking. Kind of nerves are still going. So being able to just a DH and give the arm the rest is a nice thing.
Yeah. So to be able to play day in, day out as well, not just to pitch.
Yeah, especially for a position player like me, to come out and throw a ball as hard as I could from the outfield, on a sore arm is hard to do. It's really hard on your arm as well. So giving a couple of days extra rest and then maybe playing the field after a couple of days is nice to have too. And I mean, DH is awesome. It's a relaxing position for me. So
okay,
relaxing, like DH always strikes me as high pressure. You go up there, you're kind of expected to produce. Do you feel that pressure sometimes?
Yes, I do, but at the same time, I don't have to bring my at bats out in the field with me, which I don't anyways. But it's nice to you can reflect on your on the bat you had in the inning. Even if the batting cage is open, you can get a couple of swings in between innings. Other players don't have that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Zach, now you primarily just pitch, right?
Yeah, I'm just a pitcher since playing college ball because I can't swing it like Daryn. But personally, as a player, I like the DH in the game. I think in the college game, I guess I'll say, because, I mean, at this level, we have pitchers like me who really can't swing it. So it classes up, I think, the game overall, having someone who can be in that spot and actually produce. And it allows, for me, I like focusing just on pitching when I'm in the game, with hitting at the same time, especially if you can't perform at a level like the college. If I couldn't, I don't think I could contribute consistently as a hitter, so that would be frustrating and something that I wouldn't want to do consistently and would just distract away from what I was trying to do on the mound.
You talk about pitching and then having to go hit as possibly distracting or pulling away from your concentration as a pitcher. Now, why doesn't that affect sort of other infield players or the catcher or something like that? Like, why wouldn't we have a similar type of situation with that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a guy by guy basis on the opinion of being distracted when you're pitching and hitting, but I think how it's different from position players is, a pitcher's involved. They're literally throwing every single pitch that's involved in that inning, and that's tiresome. That takes a lot out of you. Where even a first baseman might get a ball or two in an inning, or for a catcher they're more involved. But I think that comes with. I think you have an understanding if you're a position player like that as a catcher, you're going to be hitting, where if you're a pitcher, that's something you never focus on. So your focus is totally away from it, and I think it's kind of unfair if you have to put in that situation. It's just something you don't do regularly.
Mm-hmm. Do you have anything to add to that, Daryn? Or
I'm thinking.
Okay.
I'm thinking.
No, because you often do hit when you're pitching still.
Yes, yeah, every time, yeah.
So how do you think about that in terms of the possible distracting element of having to focus on pitching and being so involved, and then going and having to, and knowing that you're possibly maybe first up and then top of the next inning? How does that affect your concentration on the mound?
For me, I think it's opposite. It gives me a chance to escape from, like, if I had a bad inning.
Uh-huh.
I got runners on second and third. I'm the pitcher, and I have the opportunity to score runs for myself and manufacture runs and help myself out, and help the team out as well. So if I do that, it kind of carries over to pitching, and I'll have next inning will be a good inning.
Mm-hmm.
So in a way, I think it kind of goes opposite for me.
But that almost sounds like a reason to not have the DH, to have the pitcher hit on a more regular basis.
Like Wolf said, I think it's for the pitchers that don't hit a lot, and pitchers some pitchers on teams don't swing at all. Mm-hmm. So for them to have to start taking focus away from their main reason why they came to play college baseball, which is pitching, to start focusing on batting practice, I think it's gonna hurt their actual overall pitching performance.
Okay, so you're used to doing it where most of the other pitchers aren't.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I know, Zach, we've had this conversation before, and I was asking you, and I think I heard in the green room before the show, right? We had the big spread of food, right? Did you guys get that? No. That you were mentioning how most levels now of baseball, so Little League and high school ball and things like that, most of them have a DH role. Is that correct?
Yeah, pretty much. I think any level below the major league and the NL has the DH in the game, which you can work around it. Like Daryn's case, if you have a pitcher who can hit, you can just put him in that DH spot, and then that solves the problem if you want your pitcher hitting. But it also gives you the option that if you have someone like me who isn't able to hit that well to
Now, how bad are you?
I hit a little bit back in the day, but
he swung in the fall. He swings well.
Yeah, okay.
Well, I don't know about that, but it's you still have the option, I think, with the DH in all the levels to either have the pitcher hit or have him not. It gives a lot of flexibility to the game.
Mm-hmm. Now, and I also I asked you this, and I haven't looked further into it, and I doubt you have either. But I'd asked, well, is there a situation where you have the DH not just for the pitcher, but that you could choose any position player to do that with, and you thought that at some levels. Yeah, they like maybe at the lower levels of like maybe middle, like 10-year-old, 12-year-olds, maybe they have that. I'm getting some real skeptical looks from people.
They don't have it at the younger ages. It is bad everybody, right? And like I'm talking about 10, 11, and 12-year-old. At least the team I'm helping with right now, when the batting is just all 12 kids bat, and then you play 9 players in the field, and you can sub in and out.
Yeah, that's a little, because there you're still much more developmental. Right. You're still learning the game, learning a love of the game. And
so let me interject here for
absolutely.
a moment.
And I should say that Mike is the resident DH hater here, so he will be the voice of disdain for the DH. So.
Well, wow, that's maybe a little hard. Point guard handles the ball all the time, brings the ball down the court. You would never say, but you don't have to play defense. I don't know if that's a legitimate analogy, but all the other players in a baseball team, you're required to play both offense and defense. Mm-hmm. Now, in football, you wouldn't ask the quarterback to then line up and tackle a guy, so there's a clear line between you play one position, and it's either offense or defense. Now, baseball, to me, up until 1973, you had to do both, period. And I don't know, is there anything to the basketball analogy where there's something unfair about not asking to play both sides?
I think it's a difference of games for me. Like basketball is a totally different game where there's no really, pitch. You're not going to shoot a basket, and then there's a time, then, kind of
Right.
regather positions, and then, it's just kind of an ongoing game where baseball is kind of play by play, each pitch by pitch. And different sides, too. There's no different, really, innings in basketball. That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's fair or not, but it seems like the skills required to play offense and defense on basketball are much different than the skills required to play offense and defense in baseball.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, obviously they translate, but I think strictly speaking to a pitcher as the example, the skills to hit and pitch are completely different. I mean, there might be elements of athleticism that play in both of them, but overall I think they're completely different, where I think in a sport like basketball it might be a little more similar to bringing the ball up the floor and then sticking on your guy on defense. So.
Oh yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, I mean,
in that sense,
yeah.
Right.
But
Basketball, it would be awkward to have the guys sub in and out
Right.
on every transition, right? Or have them hang back would put the team at a severe disadvantage.
so then the question comes: why does the pitcher get to have that advantage? And
And that was part of my question of why not have, if you have a great short, and this came up because I was, as a Red Sox fan, one of their shortstop who they've since sent down to the minors. At the time, the discussion was, wow, this guy is just a tremendous defensive player. He can't crack 200 hitting the bat.
then you don't get to play.
Well, that's the thing, right? I mean,
Right.
now you don't get to play, but a pitcher, and it's a different situation here. They could be a great pitcher. If they can't hit, they can still play. And so, part of it is, well, if we can have the designated hitter for the pitcher, why not have it for a tremendous defensive shortstop or first baseman or something?
I mean, but the pitcher's like the quarterback. Every play they get the ball.
That's-
I do agree with that.
I was gonna say
That is
yeah.
a unique position.
I was going to say, with your analogy, which is interesting to think about these differences between sports, the difference between, the only parallel to a pitcher, it seems like in my mind, I'd like to hear if you guys agree, is the quarterback in football, in the sense of lowest margin for error. You're only as good as your last pitch or throw, and as the team goes, so goes you. And so that's one difference. At least it seems like point guards of basketball teams are extremely important, but not quite that important.
No.
I don't know if you guys would agree.
I agree. Like with a missed thrown ball in football is a interception. A missed spot in the game against a good hitter is a bomb. It's a home run. So I can definitely tell, and it does rely on the pitcher, because the pitcher kind of makes the tempo of the game and kind of sets the tone for the game as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think the pitching, like I kind of said before, is such a specialized kind of skill that, it's important to make that distinction.
I think that. Oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was going to ask about that, kind of follow up on what you just said, because I've been thinking about how the game is so different now with the specialty pitchers.
Yeah.
You have so many middle relievers and so on. And so, obviously, in college, they're probably very attracted to the DH for that reason. You can give folks like you more of a chance to just focus on your pitching and get ready for, potentially going to the next level or whatever. Is that good for baseball, do you think? I mean, are you able to think back to, imagine a time when you would have to pitch every inning and you'd have no relievers and you would bat too? I mean, that's kind of crazy to even think about now, right?
Yeah. I mean, how I view that, I think that kind of speaks to how the talent pool, I guess, in the game has increased, how the game has, as a whole, kind of advanced, I think, that where, back in the day, you hear the argument, guys, throw 25 complete games in a season, where I don't think you can do that anymore with how much the skill has progressed and how much the physical attributes of players has progressed, where now we have this game where everything's much more specialized due to, I think, the overall, nature of the game getting raised up through skill.
Right, and I mean, the relief pitchers, even in the 40s, they were still just starting to be used as having specialty guys come in for middle relief, specialty guys coming in even for something like a save. And it's only starting there, and then it gets into the 50s and 60s where you start to see much more of the development of the use of relief pitchers, and later. And that's kind of connects in to the DH, because that's part of the justification given for introducing the DH was the dominance of pitching in the 60s, was that it pitching dominant. I mean, you think of the names of the pitchers, Sandy Bob Gibson and some other guys that were just blowing guys away, and it just was just totally imbalancing the sport. And so they did. It wasn't only the DH that they introduced around this time. They changed the size of the mound. They did some other things to try to return a balance between the offense and defense, and one of those things was the DH, right? Because by introducing an additional bat into the lineup, and where traditionally you had people who weren't who were easy out, so to speak, for the most part, added to the offensive side of the game, and so that was meant to, I mean, as at least in part, to balance out the defensive pitching dominance that had been there in the 60s, which I think partly was from not just having some great pitchers like Sandy, but because first name base, but also the relief pitchers and the specialties, which allowed those guys to possibly be even more dominant because they didn't have to pitch every third day or fourth day. They got extra days of rest. When they had a bad game, they got taken out. So Mike is itching to jump in here.
Yeah. Well, no, I think it's this like concept of specialization, which Matt, would you follow it on? But does the DH is that around to enable a higher level of specialization in the sport rather than being more rounded, or is it a answer? I mean, on one sense, it creates a better lineup. On the other hand, like you said, it creates a sense for pitchers to be able to specialize even more. Mm-hmm. I'm not judging whether that's a good or a bad thing, but I mean, the idea behind the DH, the more troubling one I've heard is that it allows older players to hang on longer and just swing the bat. And to me, that's a very cynical, business-minded way of looking at the game, and that's where
unless
I like
you're the veteran who wants to continue to play.
I like it on all levels until you get up to the major leagues. That's when I dislike it. I appreciate it I think it's a really good thing in the college divisions, high school, but when you get up into the majors, that's where I don't want it.
Did I read your lips? Were you saying Tommy? I looked over and he was going. When you said older guys able to swing, he's a good example probably of that, right? Yeah.
Right. I mean, and you say it's kind of in a cynical way, but I think there's also a sense in which if you're that veteran who gets to continue to play, I don't think they look at it as just a cynical thing. I think they look at it as like, awesome, I get to continue to play rather than having to go and be a used car salesman or something. Yeah. Right?
It's got to have something to do with the love of the long ball too,
yes.
Right? I mean, there's these big bruiser guys, that don't keep themselves up as much as they maybe did at one time, or I mean, that's the perception of the armchair.
Adam Dunn.
Yeah. These guys who, I feel like, man, I'd like to be able to let myself go enough to play baseball. When I watch some of the guys, they're so, but they need that bulk, right? Because it gives them power, I guess. That's the logic. But I'm with Mike on that point. I think that one of the worries I do have, although I am pro DH in the sense that I like the different cultures. That's my argument for why I like the DH. I like the different cultures of the different leagues. But I do have worries that along those same lines. I feel like it does introduce a one-dimensional kind of player potentially.
Does it cut down on the managing? Is it easier to manage the White Sox than it is to manage the Cubs?
Well, that's because the Cubs suck.
No. Bad example.
Right. Well, that's actually, I really wanted to get to that because that's, I think, whatever arguments you might have had in 1973 or actually even as far back as 1906 was when they started actually talking about something like a DH. But it wasn't really taken seriously until the late 60s. They started doing it in some exhibition games.
Shows you how long change. No, it shows you how hard it is to change baseball.
Yeah, I mean, it took 60, 70 years to introduce this one rule change. But, right, so whatever arguments you might have had about increasing offense or decreasing the pitching dominance or increasing attendance, which, getting back to the love of long ball and so on, and it did. I mean, it significantly increased attendance for the American League teams post-73, and they needed it. They were in trouble. And so that was part of the idea of the rule changes, not just the DH. But whatever discussion you might have there, the contemporary arguments do seem to mostly be focused on the managerial aspect of it, and that it takes away from the strategy in the game. That I'm looking for some quotes here. That it takes the finesse out of the game, changes it for the worse. Let's see. There was a good one. Looking through this article here. Can't find it. But anyway, something along the lines of, the manager can just sit there and, chew on his sunflower seeds and enjoy his view of the game. Doesn't have to think about anything, which, seems really insincere as an argument. So I want to ask the two players. I mean, you guys aren't managers, but you play the game. Do you see a difference in strategy when you're preparing at all, or is there any decrease in strategy that you see in terms of having a DH play, or when you're going to pull the pitcher, those kinds of decisions that you do you see it as reducing the game to a simpler game by removing the pitcher from hitting?
What I was just thinking about, I think it's almost easier if the pitcher's in the lineup.
Okay.
Because say you got an instance, you got 2 outs, runners on second and third, open base, 8 hitters up, and you got the pitcher up next. What are most teams going to do? They're going to walk that hitter and then strike out the pitcher. That in that situation, I don't like the pitcher hits, because it kind of changes the game almost. Mm-hmm. It makes it a lot easier for managers. Oh, okay, walking 4 pitches, we'll strike out the next guy, the inning's over. Mm-hmm. Instead of having another hitter in there where they get some runs, manufacturing runs, kind of get the game a little more excitement, things like that.
And have to think about how you're going to pitch that guy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on the same coin, I guess, is the example Daryn just brought up. Maybe it makes it easier for that team to walk the 8 hitter and get to the pitcher, but then the other team then has the decision. Maybe what if that's the 6th inning of the game, that starting pitcher's throwing well, but it's now bases loaded when they need some runs. Does that manager take that pitcher out of the game and pinch hit for him, or does he allow the pitcher to go up there and probably not knocking a couple of runs? So at the same time, maybe it seems like it would be easier. At the same time, I think my opinion is that having the pitcher hit in the game makes it a more complicated, more managerial need in the National League game than opposed to the American League game.
Yeah, because those other 8 hitters have to really produce, before they get to the pitcher. But they don't have that opportunity to DH where they're not going to have a really big loophole in the lineup. Mm-hmm. That's just going to be automatic out most of the time.
Well, here's a quote from former Angels manager Bobby Winkles, who said, and this is the quote: "It was a great help when the pitcher used to bat, because even if you weren't sure if he was tired, if he was up and you had a man on and we were down by a run, you just take him out. Now you try to make sure he's tired, and you might go just one man too long." And so that suggests that there is still a complex decision process that you have to go through to decide when to pull the pitcher. And the scenarios are going to be different, because you're going to have the scenario where the base is loaded and pitcher's up, or what to do. Do you leave the pitcher in? Do you not? Because you're early enough in the game that you don't quite want to pull him out yet, but late, and he's pitching well late in, so you have those sort of questions. But those questions come up as well in the American League, just in a different context. So it's not necessarily a worse strategy or less strategy. It's just a different kind of strategy.
What if you get the pitcher that maybe can't hit for average, but the pitcher that can lay down a bunt, or knows can it swing well enough to put it on the ground rather than strike out? And so there are teams, you think of, Marquis. Jason Marquis was one of the better hitting pitchers, I remember, and so that changed the dynamic when you had him.
Mm-hmm. Zambrano, pretty good hitter.
Yep.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of pitchers who
Beckett.
Yeah, and I think Tim Hudson played at Stanford, and I think he holds the home run record at that school. So there's a lot of great athletes who can handle it, but then I think they're greatly outnumbered by the guys who have specialized their career to pitch and just don't really stand a chance of their.
Now, what about strategy in terms of how you use the DH itself? I mean, because you take out when you introduce the DH, you take out some things from the game. I mean, you very rarely see a double switch in American League. You take out some of these strategic things that you have to do with the pitcher. There may be other things that replace it. So whether or not it's much less strategy or just different, we could argue about that more. But one thing that strikes me is that there's maybe a strategy about how you employ the DH, what you do for the DH. So how does Rockford College? How do you guys primarily use the DH? Do you use it as a platoon thing? Do you use it to have someone who's just a good hitter be able to be in there? How do you guys generally use it? Or does it change at all?
The last one, just to get an extra good hitter in our lineup, really helps our offense.
Okay.
I can think of.
And we have. Daryn does quite a bit of DHing, but that cycles through whether Daryn's in the outfield. Then that gives us some options. We have a player, Kyle Moore, on our team who has an injured shoulder and is unable to throw the baseball, but he's DH'd a few games this year, which allows him to still play baseball. If he had to play the field in that situation, he wouldn't be able to play because he can't throw a baseball. So, it opens up a lot of options for different players to get in, or maybe you have a situation like, you have two really good players who both play first base. You can switch them in one game. One game they DH, one game they play first base. So they're both basically still involved in the game at the same time, even if you have two players at the same position who both deserve to be on the field.
Right. So you guys will kind of platoon thing or
Right,
platoon.
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 So that they both get sort of equal playing time rather than having to kind of switch one out or have one play more than the other depending on things.
And that's the same, like when I'm done pitching, I come out of the game for pitching, but I'm still the DH, so I still get to hit for the rest of the game, which is nice too. Mm-hmm. And then going back to the position thing, our two catchers are really both good hitters and both defensive catchers and about equal, so it's nice to, if I play right field, then the other catcher can DH as well and give them some more bats. And like in the pros, I think it's hard enough to make it to the pros for the major leagues for baseball. It gives people more opportunities to be in that position to get to that goal. A guy may be hitting 425 minor leagues, but he can't throw the ground ball. Mm-hmm. So it kind of gives him the opportunity to go to that league and DH and hit and kind of carry out his dream.
So a little bit more versatility for the team, more versatility for the players, more opportunities. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah. I guess my fear. And I don't mind it. The split. I like the difference in the American and National.
Oh, you can't say that. That's
sorry.
That's
I do.
my position.
I know. I know. I'm supposed to be adamantly against.
Yeah.
I don't mind there being the difference. I just enjoy watching National League baseball better.
Right.
That's my thing. And so when I've heard whispers and rumors of it becoming across Major League, that's where I get. No, you can't do that to my Cardinals.
Now that I agree with too.
Yeah.
But I can't say I like watching one or the other better, though. I like both, and the different mindset. One of the reasons I started getting into baseball years ago was I remember I was blown away. I was real young, but I was blown away when I realized that the World Series teams never played during the league. This was before interleague play, and I was like, "You're kidding!" It was just blew my mind because I'd watched all these other sports and it just didn't make sense. Wow, that's totally cool. And that
it's not entirely true though. Well, because they did play, but they played exhibition games. They didn't play games that counted. But the Yankees and Dodgers played exhibition games in the middle of the season, preseason and stuff. So, but yeah, in terms of games that counted, they didn't play until.
So, that idea seems so cool to me in this long season where they wouldn't even meet. Now, what's going to happen when these two unknown quantities get together? That was really neat. So, I'm against interleague play for that reason, but I like the difference, and I do like both styles of play, and I definitely don't think I don't see any difference in complication. There's all kinds of different scenarios that require strategy, whether you have the DH or not, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think what comes to, I guess my opinion of it is I'd be in favor of one or the other. I kind of have a problem with the National League and American League being different for the fact that, when the season's over and we're at the World Series, we have two different teams who have played by two different strategies the entire season. So I remember a criticism of Ron Washington a few years ago when his team made the World Series back-to-back years and they lost both years, and he came under fire for kind of mismanaging his team because he was, except for maybe a few series in the year which don't nearly have the strategic emphasis that a World Series would have, he doesn't have to act as a National League manager where maybe now 3 or 4 games in a 7-game series he has to do that, which is unfamiliar for him. And I guess my opinion is it's easier for a National League team to adapt to an American League strategy than an American League team to adapt to a National League strategy. Because I think just there's less overall managing in the AL in my opinion.
That could be. It's always interesting during the World Series when they switch towns and they have to have the DH or not. I think that's really fun. I love it when you have to see like a pitcher who never hits during the year hit. That's really fun.
Yeah.
Or you see Big Papi out there playing first. Like, what is he doing out there?
On the other hand, the other argument that from the National League perspective I've heard made is that they're at a distinct disadvantage because they don't have a full-time, big-time slugger that they're paying for. And so it's one of the secondary players that gets to come in and have extra. Now,
they don't have the extra bat.
Really. But on the other hand,
well, it sounds like they sort of the imbalances, or the disadvantages balance out in some way, and there's advantages to both. Like Matt, I and I guess Mike too. I really like, and Daryn, you'll have to jump in on this, but I really like that there are different rules. I get your point about. They're playing by two different sets of rules, and then they come and meet. But that's what I find so fascinating is because it offers different strategies, different modes of play, and then they come in and then they have to compete against each other, and then they go back and forth. And okay, now we're going to play on your terms. Now we're going to play on my terms. And I think you get a really interesting test of the team as a whole and of the different set of rules.
That's what's unique. You don't get that in football. You don't get that in basketball. There's no way to really, but I don't think. But there's a way to do that in baseball where there's a slight difference and it makes it.
Well, I mean, because otherwise, why do you have? I mean, when you think about why we have the AFC and the NFC, or I mean, what other than the historical accident of the AFL and the NFL merging, and then some of that's even washed away as you have realignment. Why do we have that other than for structural reasons for scheduling? But in baseball, you have a real reason why we have two different leagues that do play, even with interleague, play each other much less.
The junior league, the senior league.
Right.
The senior league being the more senior. I'll let that go.
Yeah.
One of the ongoing battles I've had pleasure on the sidelines listening to between Mike and Sean is the one about the superiority or inferiority of American League, National League. I think you guys are mostly just having fun, but it is fun to think about though. Now overall, who are my stat hounds here? Like who all time has won the most World Series? American League, National League. I should know that, but.
I don't know off the top of my head.
That's where you need your paid statistician, right?
Yeah, I know. Where's like I need an intern or something.
It's probably I'm guessing it's fairly well balanced. I mean, overall, I would doubt that there's an overwhelming advantage, right, on one side or the other.
Yeah, my guess is that over the 100 years or so, it probably has balanced out. Certainly, there's decades. I mean, obviously, you have the 20s with the Yankees, and so I think probably. Because when you think about like the 20s and the 30s and the 40s, it's probably more American League dominance.
Yeah.
And now, of course, this is all pre-DH because you have the Tigers, you have the Yankees, you have the Red Sox, all of who were in Cleveland, also very good in that period. On the other side, I mean, you have the Cardinals. You have who else you got? Dodgers. Right, although not until really later in the 40s.
The Yankees skew that.
Yeah, definitely.
They just
Zach, your point about the different strategies, I want to riff off that just for a second. Is I was thinking of like what I like about the NBA. It's a good example of this, although it's not as fun to watch today as it was in the past. In my view, I'm an old fogey, I guess, but it does have a culture difference as well, right? The East is kind of hard-nosed, defensive-minded, and always did hard fouls. At least in the '80s, that was the case. I don't know if that's as true today, but right, it was hard-nosed, hard fouling, hard defense, and all defense-minded, and then the West was all offense.
Yeah.
So you'd watch like Phoenix Suns, and it would be like 140 to 120 games and stuff like that. So there's a culture difference there as well, without it really being as conscious, I guess. But that's again from a fan point of view, I like that. And come finals time, come postseason time, that's the added kind of interesting challenge I think for the coaches.
Yeah, I think the only difference between that kind of the basketball analogy and baseball is basketball there's no like fundamental difference between how the game's played. I mean, it's a strategy that's different, but where in the American League and National League, that's a fundamental rule difference that is at the core of what's separating the two, which I think is kind of more central to the kind of the problem it creates, in my opinion at least.
That's a fair point.
So I did a little Googling here, and the American League has won 61 of the World Series.
Okay.
And the National League 44.
Okay.
Now, of course, 27, much to
27,
my chagrin,
say it.
Are the what's that team? Something like that. Have won 27 of those. So 61.
I see that as fairly
it's
balanced.
probably more balanced once you take out or you balance out the skew of the Yankees, because the next closest totals
St.
are
Louis Cardinals.
The Cardinals have 11 appearances. The Giants have more appearances, but the Cardinals have more wins at 11.
And post DH would be interesting to see. I bet you National League might have the edge, perhaps. That'd be interesting to see, wouldn't it? Post DH.
That's I'd have to actually get out and count
Pirates and stuff like that.
Just looking,
Pirates,
let's see, 73, AL, AL, NL, NL, AL, AL, NL, 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 a couple years, AL, AL, NL. Looks
pretty even.
It looks pretty balanced, which makes sense, and I think you go through decades where you're going to have more dominant teams, and so it's going to be more balanced, and it's interesting that way. I think obviously, and again, the Yankees skew it. See, that's just more reason to hate the Yankees. But when you going back to the managers, I mean, you have some great managers in the American League, right? I mean, Jim Leland and Joe Torre and Terry Francona. I mean, it's hard to say that they are not doing anything and just sitting there chewing on their sunflower seeds and tobacco or whatever. All right.
Well, I mean, La Russa certainly overmanaged his A's and Sox just as much as he did the Cardinals. I mean, in that sense, I say that endearingly.
So that part's interesting. Now, one of the other arguments that come up against the DH is the moral hazard of hit batsmen. And so by what I mean there is the moral hazard is this concept of by making it a reduced punishment for something makes it more likely that you're going to do it. Right, so you create a moral hazard by removing the punishment, removing the consequences from your actions. So the idea is that if the pitcher isn't hitting, he doesn't have to fear retribution for hitting a batter. Right. So what do you think about that? Do you think that by not hitting, you're more likely to hit a batter like with a beanball or intentionally? Obviously, intentionally, not accidentally, is different. But like where you would actually intentionally hit a batter, are you more likely to do that? Zach, as someone who doesn't hit, do you think about that?
I mean, I think it's something that's worth considering. But I mean, for me personally, in a team context, if I do it, it's coming back to your team, even if it's not to you specifically. I think most guys who are in the team have the kind of overall awareness, overall concern for their teammates. So maybe it might even feel like kind of a cop-out if you hit somebody, then somebody else on your team is wearing what you did. So at the same time, it could be for a pitcher who maybe has like a personal vendetta against someone to do it, and like they don't have to deal with the retribution of it. But I think like the majority is you're kind of in a team aspect where, even if, you're not getting it directly, or one of your teammates are, and that can be just as bad.
Daryn?
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I've honestly never hit somebody on purpose before, but I think if...
especially if you're coming back in as a DH, right?
yeah, if I'm hitting it, they're going to come after me, but as like he said, it's a team thing. I mean, if I hit somebody, then they're going to hit one of, pick out one of our players on our team that may be doing good that game and, try to come hit high and tight, hit him in the head or something like that. Hopefully nothing like that, but...
Well, you raise a good point there, which is if the pitcher is generally the weakest hitter, why do you want to hit him and put him on base? Mm-hmm. Right. So you'll end up hitting a different player anyway. So the pitcher doesn't necessarily see the retribution right back at him anyway. And as Zach said, it's going to go at another player, either a player who's playing really well that day or just someone who's just really good anyway.
Yeah, I think that's a team question more than anything. I mean, I as a former player, like many years ago, a little league player, that was always like the moral outrage from being hit was the team outrage. It wasn't like just because I got hit or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Then from when I hit, I throw righty, but I bat lefty, so my lead arm is my right arm. So I wear a big, brace, like a big brace, but a nice thing to cover my elbow. That way, just in case if pitcher does throw at me, I can at least defend myself,
right,
and not hit in the bone or something like that, get hurt.
Mm-hmm.
So it helps a little bit.
I sent you guys beforehand. I'll put a link up to this paper. It's a law review article actually about the baseball's moral hazard, law, economics, and the designated hitter rule. And they do an analysis of this, and they do find that there is an increase in hit batsmen after the introduction of the DH in the American League. And by and large, up until the 90s, the American League does statistically have more hit batsmen. So there is some evidence for that. They dispute whether it's wholly there, right? They make the claim that there are other conditions that have led to an increase in batsmen. But some of it, not so much from the moral hazard, but it's still there because one of the things that they explain is that, if I understand their argument correctly, that because you have the DH, you have an extra bat. You have in the lineup, and so you might have who's very good, and so it gives you a little bit more of an incentive to hit him, to put him on base instead of letting him hit, and getting an extra base hit or something. And so they are, and so that's still due to the DH, but it's not so much a moral hazard argument. It's just you've changed some of the strategic thinking about the game. So they dispute whether they think that it's contributed to the increase. What's interesting is that in the mid-90s, you see it even out, and even the NL actually surpass in terms of the numbers of hit batsmen. And anyone have a guess why?
Because LaRusso went to the National League. Just kidding.
Well, we talked
about it. So, yeah. Do you remember why?
It was the implementation of warning both teams. Mm-hmm. So if you get, if like one team gets warned, the other team has the opportunity to still, get that one last shot in. So
that's interesting. So they have a warning. They know they have a warning to come, and they can get away with it. Is that what it is?
Basically, you get the warning system. They warn both sides. You basically have you get one free shot.
Wow, interesting.
I mean, that's not the warning. The warning, I think, happens after you get the free shot.
Yeah,
and then they warn both sides, and so then the next hit batsman is trouble. Right, you get thrown out of the game. So, but the one freebie is up before the warning.
Yeah,
and so you can throw that, and you're sort of with impunity can throw at a batter at that point, and so that's where it increased, and so you get this unintended consequence of trying to make the game safer actually has made it more dangerous.
It's interesting.
So as someone interested in philosophy and economics and moral philosophy, I find that very interesting because I think there's a lot of laws like that are intended to make us safer but actually make us less safe. But that's a different podcast.
And also I think the focus of the DH is twice as hard as a position player. If you think a position player, they can have it a bat and then go back on the field, forget about it. A DH is going to have it a bat, and have to wait, 3 or 4 innings before he gets another bat. He has to sit there and just watch the game go by. I think it takes toll on the, as a hitter, and the focus level is twice as much. People think, DHs, their life's so easy, they just get to hit and just relax. But as a mental thing, I think it's you can fall out of the game really easily, and have the next 2 or 3 at bats could be really crappy.
No, that's great, and I think the other way the focus thing works too, would maybe an advantage where the pitcher would have with the ability to go back and sit is to get into that rhythm where you get a pitcher that gets on base in the middle of a really good game, and now they're running and they're thinking like, does that take them out of the focus of the game? I don't know. I mean, I see that happening during a game. I'm always like, just get out and sit back down.
Right? Yeah, because then they're thinking about hitting. They're thinking about the other pitcher and what are they going to throw? What are they going to hit? And then they're on base. What do they do on base? And so then they got to go out and pitch, and so that could be something. And that's Zach. You were talking earlier about the distraction. That's some of the distraction I would bet if you're hitting.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen in big league games where a National League pitcher's gone up to the plate with their coat on, their bat on their shoulder, and watched 3 fastballs go down the middle and walk back into the dugout because that's not what they're focused on. Maybe in the middle of a good game. So yeah, I think that's definitely a fair point.
What's his name for the Diamondbacks? Big guy.
Randy Johnson.
It was so fun to watch him bat. He just was pissed off that he was up there.
He would back out.
Come on.
Well,
that I think speaks to the virtue of having a DH is that you don't have that situation, which seems to be a detriment to the game. I mean, because they obviously, it's to just go out there and just take those 3 strikes and walk away is so pointless.
That's the exception.
That's probably more the exception. Yeah, but I mean, the fact that's there is, I think, is a point against having pitchers hit.
I'd much rather see Jim Thome come up to the plate and hit a 520-foot home run than watch, somebody Sale go into the league and strike out. Go to the league. I'd rather watch Jim Thome hit a bomb than that.
Right. Well, and that's why the fans tend to like, at least in the American League, like the DH and go to more games because of the DH, because they're more interested in seeing that aspect of the game.
Now, you guys, what about since we have you here to take advantage of you guys being here, relief pitchers, it strikes me, as not dissimilar from DH in the sense that, it's all or nothing. You're sitting down for a long period of time. You don't know when you're going to come up, potentially. And then you got to be ready, and you got to be ready when you're needed. And
you probably won't be hitting.
Yeah,
because depending on when you're getting pitched. I mean, if you're a long relief, you will. But if you're short relief, you're just coming in maybe for 2 or 3 guys or just an inning. You probably get pitch hit for in the next inning.
It's what is it like to have to be so specialized, whether it's DHing or relieving?
I mean, I've done the relief role before, and kind of like Daryn talked about before, it's a lot of focus, and it's something you have to prepare yourself for. It's not something that's easy to do like the DH. I mean, I don't think a player's been a position player, played defense and offense their whole career, I think would struggle just to bat for an entire season, because that's half the game that they're normally playing is out of it. So I think that goes for a pitcher. I mean, you have to learn how to be in that role, which is a lot of times why, like, if you'll see in a game where a starter is going to get like an inning in relief, maybe like late in the season or something, just kind of a tune-up, they might get lit up. Or like in the All-Star game as an example, where you'll see a starting pitcher come in like the 4th inning and just it's not his usual role, and despite how good he is, he has struggles with that. So yeah, I think it's again, it speaks to kind of the specialization of the game.
The mental preparedness you need for your particular role. I mean, that's you see guys that are better suited for the save position. Yeah. They can come in and get those 3 quick outs. They can't do, it takes a totally different mentality to stretch them out for a game. So
mentality and skill set, yeah. I mean, Mariano Rivera couldn't throw 8 innings for 30 starts a game with
Thank God.
a pitch like he does.
And he's back at it again. Amazing.
Can't believe that.
Crazy.
All right, well, the 2 baseball players here, they need to go get to practice because you guys got a tournament that you need to get into. And
good luck.
Go Rockford.
Good luck. Go Rockford. All right, thanks for joining us, guys.
Thanks
a lot.
Thank you.
Is the talk about it moving into the National League, is that serious at all, or is that just one of those?
I don't think so.
Now, Sean, are you against that too?
I am against that. No, I like I said, I like that the DH is in the AL but not the NL. I like the differences in the leagues. I like. I think it brings. Because if you didn't have that difference, then you might as well just do like what the NFL does and have total interleague play, total interconference play, and just schedule it in some way. So, I mean, the only justification to even have this sort of specialness of interleague play and the World Series itself is the fact that there is this sort of difference between the 2 leagues.
Yeah.
And so I like that. And then on top of that, I think just in terms of the fan bases. And that's one of the things that in that law review article they talk about is they say that, and that's what they recommend is the status quo is American League fans like the DH, National League fans don't. So whatever gain you wouldn't. So one of the reasons why the American League did it was to gain audience, right? To bring more people in. That wouldn't work for the NL, at least according to their analysis, because the National League fans don't want to see that. They want the baseball that you play in the National League, and they want to see that, and so they wouldn't increase, at least maybe not right away. It wouldn't be a big jump. There'd be a big backlash. And so I like to see, and so from the fans' perspective, I think respect the National League fandoms and the fact that that's their tradition. I mean, now we're looking at. I mean, it was one thing having this argument maybe in 1978 when it's only 5 years old, but now that it's 40 years old,
right.
To think about it, it's a tradition. I mean, I grew up American League, Red Sox. That's primarily what I saw. It's what I when I played. You
didn't have a choice, did you?
About what?
Liking the Red Sox?
No, not really. Right. So, I'm glad of it. But, right. And so, I mean, to see a pitcher hit to me was just weird. Right. I mean, as weird as it must be for the National League to look at a DH and be like, well, why isn't that guy playing in the field? So for me, it was totally natural. And I think there's a whole generation of people that have grown up and are growing up with the DH, and it's totally natural. And to them, it's their tradition now. 40 years is a good long time.
What's crazy about Little League Baseball is the best pitchers were always the best hitters because they were the most athletic and best baseball players on the team.
I was going to say
that. You never had a guy who could come in and close it down in Little League who didn't also hit the ball. And so I think as a kid seeing that, and I try to go, how can they hit? Aren't they supposed to be the best pitcher, the best hitters too? But it's that increased specialization. Which
right, as you get at more advanced levels, it makes more sense that there is that more specialization that's going on, and so you need to specialize as well. And then the things that Zach was talking about in terms of the concentration and distraction and having to think about those things and the totally different skill sets that you need to focus on one or the other. And so also, as you're the great athlete when you're 10 or 12, you probably are far better than everybody else anyway. And so you don't need to specialize. But then when you're on the same team with everybody who's as good as you are, now it's a different story. And so the specialization is called for. And I think improves the game. I think it makes it overall a lot more interesting because as you get specialization, everybody gets better at what they're doing. And so the overall product, I think it becomes much more interesting and better.
One thing I would say in response to that too, though, is I worry sometimes that the specialization can backfire. There's a lot of cases of pitchers, good examples of pitchers, I guess, who are made into middle relievers or closers or vice versa. Some closers who actually remade into starters and things like that. And things are discovered about their talents that were hidden before, or vice versa. They lose what was good about them, And so sometimes I think that can backfire.
Well, and then how you do it, right? I mean, the way they screwed up Jabba Chamberlain in New York, by yo-yoing them between the two instead of just saying, okay, look, you're going to be a relief pitcher, or look, you're going to be a starter. Yeah. And the Red Sox too, with one of their pitchers trying to make him into a starter from a relief pitcher, and didn't work out.
Yep. Of course, Wainwright comes into the pen and turns into the starter. But I think they always had that in plan anyways, because he came in late. But I worry that the specialization starts too young now. Like I'm talking 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10-year-olds already having their own pitching coaches, and that's where I think
and then just focusing on even just one sport. I mean, regardless of the specialization within the sport, just choosing baseball when you're 5, and that's all you're going to do. That to me is a recipe for lack of real full development and happiness. And
that's another hour as well.
Absolutely. I mean, the whole issue with kids sports is very complicated and tricky. In closing, I wanted to spend the last 5 minutes or so, 4 minutes or so, in a sort of make-believe world. If you were a commissioner of whatever league you want, so leaving the DH aside, because we've already started talking about that, is there any rule that you would want to change or introduce, let's say in football or in soccer or whatever, that you would want to introduce that you think would make the game better, or get rid of a rule that's there that you think would improve the game?
You're talking in any sport?
Any sport.
Wow.
Yeah, you're commissioner of all sports, and you get a czar for the day, and you can choose one rule to introduce or remove.
For me, I'm a big tennis fan. I would get rid of all the what do you call it, automated line calls. And
really?
Stuff like that. Yeah, I know it sounds purist and all this, but it has changed the game for the worse in some senses. Roger Federer is a great example. He hates it. Maybe that's why I hate it too, because I like Roger Federer. But he finally has begrudgingly accepted it, and it just takes away from the pace of the game. And the players are thinking all the time about, should I use one of my challenges and this kind of stuff. Now
is it the way it's set up in terms of they have to have a challenge rather than just have it in the background automated, and the ref gets a buzz, or the umpire or whatever gets a buzz if it's in or out, so that it would be totally automated, or is it the fact that they have an automated system?
It's different from tournament to tournament, but the major tournaments are pretty consistent that they have a number of challenges per set,
right,
as I understand it, right? And so it's sitting there, and they just have to wave at the ump, and then they replay it, and then if it overrules, then it overrules,
right?
And it's high degree of accuracy, and a lot of people. I mean, John McEnroe's all for it, sure, because he smashed all his rackets and made such a ruckus throughout his career. But I guess that's just one thing that comes to mind. I'm really uncomfortable.
But what I wanted to push you on is whether it's the fact that there's the automated process, or is it the way it's implemented by having it structured in that way? Like if it was structured better, or is it the fact that having technology in the game?
It's the fact in the same way it would be for baseball. I don't want to see it happen in baseball. And again, maybe I am a purist, not knowing I am, but I'd like to think it's coming from another place too. I just think that part of the game is the imperfection of the calls and the human part of the refereeing in both of those sports, I would say.
I would say that football's gotten out of control too, where the automatic reviews, and on some level I like it, but on some level it feels it's disrupted the pace even further, where you never you never dare celebrate anything or get excited until you.
Yeah, you're like, wait.
Yeah,
are there any flags? Wait, is there a review? Absolutely, you have to be like that. No, that's true, but I tend to think I'm more in the camp of having more of that review technology, if it can be implemented in ways that doesn't break up the seamlessness of the game and things like that, not interfere. But the more we can do to make sure we get the calls right, especially now where you have everybody's eyeballs on these games watching with HD, right? That you can see that's not a strike. Well, strikes are hard to call from TV because you're off angle, but that's not a touchdown, or that's not. That ball's out. What are you talking about?
It works with football because there is no continuous play. It's just constant, just stop, stutter. Whereas baseball, I don't think it would work. But then there's drama. There's a whole theater to the umpire, the referee going under the hood, and then the announcers stating the obvious once again. Now, what happens here is, as they describe it every time, and
then they still get it wrong. No, it's. I think football has gotten a much better handle on that and has improved it, which is why I think even though when you introduce it and it's kind of clunky, get it in there and start improving it by how the game is going. Because what I'd eventually like to see is have it much more automated, so that have some sort of sensor in the ball. I mean, so for example, breaking the plane in football. that the players have sensors on their uniform and the ball has a sensor, so you know when his knee's down, you know when the ball crosses the plane. Bingo. No question. No 5-minute review. No discussion. It's just
what if
bingo.
the tech fails? Do you have to have who's there to?
You have multiple systems.
Unless
there's a blackout. When does that ever happen? It's not like you're going to have a blackout in the Super Bowl.
Here's another one then related to what you're saying. I know when I grew up playing basketball and I was taught the fundamentals, it was 1.5 steps before you travel. Why don't we get some sensors for that? The entire game, there would be violations every play, right?
Oh, yeah.
So
with things like withholding and stuff like that in football too.
But that's obviously just silly. But that's a good example of what I mean. I think the culture of the game is created by the players. It's altered by the players. There are new eras introduced by different players who have different paradigms. I just like that about it, and I think fans cheer one way or another. Maybe the players like it. Maybe there is some amount of justice that the players feel is served when they get the calls right in key situations. I see that, but
I would just.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I would say, just talking about the original question.
All right. Okay.
I would set up the NBA as a Final Four tournament rather than
good one,
7-game series, which make no sense in basketball.
Absolutely.
They don't do it during the season. Why would they do it at the end?
Right.
You set it up. They have to come out and play like gangbusters.
Win or go home.
Win or go home.
Wow,
and
that
you
would
do
be
it.
great.
Totally.
Well, because then the Heat would be out.
It's cynical, babe. You would watch every game.
Yeah.
You would watch every game. It would be amazing. They wouldn't make near as much money because they don't get to play as many games.
I've been saying that for a long time. I totally agree.
Well, well, it'd be interesting to see thinking about how many games could you actually have. You might be able to make it so there are still a number of games because you don't necessarily have to have the tournament exactly like the always Final Four. It doesn't have to be
even 3-game tournaments
or you do
series.
like what they do in soccer, right? Where you have home and away, right?
You could do a double. You could do double elimination by any means, right? Yeah.
Or you could have a group play and that. There's ways to do it that might make it more interesting and more So that's your rule. I don't know.
Do you have one?
I've been. It's my question. I should have an answer to it. I guess. I think what I would like to see, not so much a rule change per se, but a better clarification and understanding on some of the rules in football, as you were talking about, like some of the pass interference rules, some of the the contact rules. That they're just so vague in some ways that I think that they need to work on those still because it's just not clear. And then the catches in the end zone and things like that, like some of it is just not clear enough now, and it's just and it's getting worse with some of the hits to the head type things where it's just you're taking the play out of the game.
How do they decide what's reviewable and what's not? And the fact that you can't review the penalties or those things, but you can.
That's crazy. What do you guys think about the possibility of eliminating kickoffs? We were talking about that last year.
I don't like it.
That would be horrible.
Yeah, I think there's the special teams is a distinct part of the game. Yeah. You see games swing on that. Personally, I think back to the Green Bay Patriots Super Bowl. The Patriots got within one touchdown. It was close. The Patriots are on their way back. It was a close game. They had the momentum, and then that guy ran back the touchdown, and that was pretty much the end of the game. And then Green Bay ran away with it. So, I'm not going to say that if you didn't have kickoffs, we would have won that Super Bowl. But it changes the nature of the game by having it. And I think if you remove it, you really do affect the game. And as I understand the injury statistics, it's not that you're no more likely to get injured on kickoff than any other part of the game. Now, if it was significantly different, that would change the conversation. But there's no real statistically significance that you're gonna end up losing more players that way.
And what a terrifying concept to catch a ball and know you have the entire other team know you're getting the ball and they're all running at you full speed.
Right.
And you have to sprint right into them. That's
it.
crazy to watch. That's athletes now.
Yeah, it's an exciting part of the game. Yeah. So I think there's other things you can do to try to protect the players. That's all the time we have for today. So thanks, Mike, Matt, and Zach and Daryn.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Sean.